Trunner for real stunner. I'ma do my numbers. I'm like the glove on his prime, taking the ball from you. I'm a globe trotter. My 3 game off the chain. Man, I'm in the lane. LeBron James, I'ma bang that. Better get out my way. They see it in the stands. With Hamilton with the hands. Truck a slam dunk champ. The competition, man. Y'all ain't got a chance. Plus, like I hit that 3 with 3 seconds left, and I'm down by 2 in the last of a 7-game series to beat you. Who high? Y'all not.
Imagine I told you that there's a player that, in 9 seasons, had fewer total points than Tobias Harris, a lower points per game average than Andrew Wiggins, the same assists per game clip as Nikola Vucevic, a lower assist per game clip than Brandon Knight, fewer career rebounds than Markieff Morris, fewer All-Star appearances than Kyrie Irving, fewer championships than Klay Thompson, and will probably never win an NBA MVP? What if I also told you that with the exception of Wiggins, who was in a different draft class, this player was considered to be better than all those names that I listed that were in the same class as him? Well, who is this man of mystery?
I'm here with Fun Guy.
What's tomorrow?
Fun Guy, what's up, baby?
What it do, baby?
Yeah, you already know.
What it do, baby? And
Yes, that's correct. While some might point to these statistics as flawed because of the number of games, on many of them the games or the games started are similar enough to make these comparisons valid. Many of the all-time debates now are going to be people going to Basketball Reference and looking at raw numbers or advanced analytics, and we all know Kawhi is better than anyone I just named. So why do we continue to do it when we look back at it through the historical lens? Consider that outside of 2017, Kawhi has not finished top 3 in MVP voting and will likely never win one. But this year could be the first player to win 3 titles with 3 different teams and will likely have 3 Finals MVPs to his resume. He has 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, but these are likely his only regular season accolade outside of making All-Star games. But anyone who has watched Kawhi, especially in the 2019 playoffs, recognizes him as a top 5 player in the league and someone who could potentially end up as a top 25 player ever. He has also been a big part in stopping 2 teams from three-peating, the Heat with LeBron and the Warriors with Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. But with his resume lacking in pure statistics and validation, how will he be looked at 20 years from now? Consider that Kobe, despite only having 1 MVP, statistically was a top 5 scorer in the record books and stayed with 1 team his whole career, meaning he had an army of fans who used this as a loyalty bonus for him. It's part of his mystique and legacy. LeBron has individual accolades and statistics and has a chance to finish as the NBA's all-time leading scorer. Curry has 2 MVPs and is regarded as the best ever at something, shooting. Durant has an MVP and 2 Finals MVPs, plus will finish as a top 8 scorer on the charts and potentially higher if he comes back from his injury in a positive way. When we look at Kawhi, he's a dominant two-way player, but defensive prowess often gets lost to history. It's why Bill Russell isn't as highly regarded as Wilt because Wilt has monster statistics. Kawhi feels very Bill Russell-like to me because he impacts winning in a positive way, he elevates franchises, but won't have the numbers at the end of his career. You had to be there to see his dominance, and those who were there knew. Those in Russell's era knew how good he was, and it's why most coaches and players from his time period consider him to be better than Wilt. But many recent all-time lists will have Wilt higher than Russell. Consider that Kawhi, in year 9, just passed Tyson Chandler on the all-time scoring list, which is crazy for a player of Kawhi's caliber. Kawhi is a dominant two-way player, but isn't much of a facilitator with his low assist numbers. Consider this year he's averaging a career-high 5 assists, but for his career only averages around 2.7 a game. Offensively, when someone like Kevin Durant, who isn't known much for his passing, is still better than Kawhi. Leonard's early career role may be a part of this in San Antonio because he wasn't asked to facilitate much, but the numbers didn't see a significant increase in Toronto or in his later Spurs years. While he improved his three-point shooting in recent years, his 38% clip still isn't high enough for him to be remembered for that skill. Because of his natural reserved nature, he doesn't have a brand that people will remember either. The New Balance campaign was something people in the moment will remember, but I'm looking long-term. Players like this, who are often more reserved and quiet, often get lost to history. He doesn't have one dominant skill, but is an elite defender and mid-range scorer, 2 things that translate into playoff success. Leonard is looking at ending his career with just about 20,000 points, which for a potential all-time great isn't that high of a number. His strategy has been about maximizing his body for postseason play and chasing championships. Several close calls could have derailed his Raptors run, including that 76ers Game 7 and the fact that the Bucks were a shot away from going up 3-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Add on to the Warriors' injuries, and Kawhi's conversation could be very different right now. This may seem like an anti-Kawhi video, but it isn't. I'm pointing out about how Kawhi's career is hard to judge in terms of historical value. Consider Anthony Davis, who has roughly the same number of played games as Kawhi, has more win shares and is favored by advanced metrics as being the quote better player or more valuable player. Yet we've seen Kawhi elevate his game on the postseason stage and has the potential for 4 to 5 championships without even cracking 20,000 career points. His career numbers could end up looking like Mark Aguirre or Alex English with less scoring. With just pure numbers, he looks like Klay Thompson or Andrew Wiggins, or potentially having a stat line similar to Paul Pierce averages-wise, who no one considers as a top 30 player of all time. The crazy part is that while Kawhi will have similar stat lines to these players, he simply just isn't getting enough game time to be a 25,000 point scorer like English, Aguirre, and Pierce were. Yet he'll have been more accomplished championship-wise than either one of those three and has a title of one of the 5 best players in a decade, which neither English, Pierce, or Aguirre can say. At least the metrics, the advanced ones, recognize his value when he has played. Leonard was one of the youngest Finals MVPs in league history at age 22, was historically great defensively and still is, but his legacy is still widely an unknown. What makes Leonard's evaluation difficult is that he missed an entire season basically due to injury, and the fact that his minutes per game and games started each season are far lower than most players. While regular season advanced metrics still give him his due as an elite player, most basketball arguments today center on just basic box score evaluations, which for Kawhi is impossible because historical comparisons don't see players take nearly a quarter of the season off year to year. How do we know Leonard is an all-timer? Consider this: using advanced metrics for postseason stats, when Leonard is playing every game and averaging out the other players of his era's games played to roughly even to what he has, Leonard has been more valuable than everybody but LeBron James. Stats like win shares and box plus minus, normally rewarded for those with more games played, shows Leonard as roughly equal or better than many of the players, so it shows how deadly efficient and special Leonard has been despite having far fewer opportunities in terms of minutes played. In addition, he compared just as favorably to Larry Legend, Larry Bird, and Scottie Pippen, two of the players at the same position in the postseason. Now, I'm not saying Leonard is better than these two yet, but if he keeps at the same pace, there's a good argument that he could be. In summary, box score arguments, at least for the regular season, don't favor Kawhi as an all-time great. He will end up in probably the 30s in the all-time scoring list, potentially even lower, won't put up high assist numbers, won't ever probably play a full season again, won't say a word to the media, and doesn't really have a rallying cry that other players speak about like passion or intensity. But looking at what he has done while he has played, and the fact that in a space like the postseason, when the playing field is leveled for more favorable statistical comparisons, shows him as ahead of most of his current comrades, and with more time, possibly surpassing the all-time greats like Scottie, Larry, and potentially Durant. If the last name is weird to you, 3 titles, 3 Finals MVPs with 3 different teams is a real conversation about who's the better player, at least for postseason legacy. We're looking at a career that has no real historical comparison, a player with a historic postseason legacy backed up by numbers, titles, Finals MVPs, but due to a variety of circumstances will end his career with no regular season awards like MVP, or validation in the form of all-time great numbers. Let's hope in 20 years, people don't value the latter over the former. Kawhi is one of the best of his time and should show why evaluating basketball and players is not just a one-size-fits-all set of guidelines. If someone tells you that Davis or Harden is better in 20 years because of numbers, remember that like Bill Russell, most everyone in his era knew who was better, for reasons that oftentimes need a deeper explanation.
Enjoy this moment, and have fun with it.